Every financial journey begins with an illusion. You take the first steps, saving, investing, being disciplined, and expect the world to immediately respond. But nothing dramatic happens, your numbers barely move, your account feels stagnant, and the effort feels heavier than the reward. This is where most people mistakenly believe they're doing something wrong. But the truth is far simpler. The early phase of wealth building is supposed to feel slow. Money does not grow in a straight line. It grows like momentum, weak at first, then gradually stronger, until eventually it becomes a force of its own. Imagine pushing a massive stone wheel across flat ground. At first, it resists you. Every push feels pointless. But with each effort, you store a little energy in that wheel, energy you can't see yet. Then, without warning, the ground ahead begins to tilt, just slightly, and suddenly the same wheel that fought every inch begins to roll with less resistance. That's how wealth behaves. The early years are about building the habits, the discipline, and the structure that make future growth possible. You are laying the foundation for acceleration even if you don't feel it yet. And the most surprising part, the foundation phase is the hardest not because of money, but because of perception. Your brain expects immediate feedback, instant validation, a sign that your effort is paying off. But finance plays by different rules. It rewards consistency, not impatience. It values time, not emotion. And it stays quiet long before it begins to get loud. The law of inevitable acceleration is this: if you stay consistent long enough, there will come a moment when your results grow faster than your effort, a moment when compound growth stops being theoretical and becomes visible, a moment when your money begins to work harder than you do. What once felt like pushing a heavy wheel becomes guiding a moving one. The struggle fades, the progress multiplies, and you finally see what was happening all along. Every slow step, every quiet month, every small deposit was building the momentum that will soon carry you forward with a speed you couldn't imagine at the start. Acceleration doesn't happen at the beginning, it happens because of the beginning. And once it starts, the journey changes forever. If wealth building had a soundtrack, the opening years wouldn't sound triumphant. They'd sound quiet, uncomfortably quiet. And that silence is exactly why most people never reach the point where their money finally takes off. See, the early phase of your financial journey isn't just slow, it feels invisible. You're saving, investing, doing the right things, yet your numbers behave like they're half asleep. Nothing moves fast enough to feel meaningful, and humans, by nature, are terrible at staying committed when results stay hidden. This period has a name: the silent season. It's the most dangerous stage of all, not because the math stops working, but because your mind starts doubting. You begin to wonder if you're behind. You compare yourself to friends who seem to be sprinting ahead, buying nicer cars, taking bigger trips, celebrating promotions. But what you don't see is the truth beneath the surface. Many of them aren't building wealth, they're building payments. Meanwhile, the silent work you're doing feels like it isn't paying off at all. The silent season is where impulsive decisions thrive. This is where people switch strategies, chase quicker returns, panic sell, stop investing, start again, stop again, and sabotage the very momentum they were about to unlock. And here's the paradox that breaks most people: your slowest financial years are the most important ones, not because of the money they generate, but because of the habits they build. Think of a tree. When a seed is planted, nothing seems to happen. For weeks, the soil looks undisturbed. But underground, something crucial is occurring. Roots are spreading, anchoring, preparing to support future growth that will later look sudden to everyone watching. Your wealth works exactly the same way. During the silent season, the roots of your financial life are forming: your discipline, your consistency, your identity as someone who invests no matter what the market says. This invisible foundation is the reason your future growth will one day look effortless. Most people never make it past this stage because they mistake quiet progress for no progress. But the people who understand the game, the ones who stay consistent even while doubting, are the ones who eventually experience the moment when everything clicks. Because once you get past the silent season, you enter a different world. A world where results finally show up. A world where the numbers begin to grow faster than your effort. A world where money stops whispering and starts getting loud. And most people never hear that part of the story simply because they quit before the sound ever reaches them. Every investor, whether they realize it or not, is walking toward a single moment. A moment when the math stops being flat and suddenly bends. A moment when the curve at long last turns upward. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't feel dramatic at first. In fact, it sneaks up on you so quietly that most people only notice it in hindsight. It begins with a small realization. Your money is now growing faster than you are contributing. The first time this happens, it almost feels like a glitch. You refresh the page, you rerun the numbers, you wonder if you miscalculated. Because for years, you were the engine, you were the fuel, you were the only reason that number moved at all. But then, one day, your money starts moving on its own. Not because you worked harder, but because it finally reached critical mass. This moment is the financial equivalent of water hitting its boiling point. For a long time, nothing seems to happen. You add heat, nothing. More heat, still nothing. But underneath the surface, molecules are accelerating, pressure is building, energy is accumulating. Then suddenly, without any visible warning, the entire behavior of the water changes. Not gradually, instantly. Wealth behaves the same way. Your contributions heat the water. Compound growth is the pressure building inside, and the turning point, your first serious acceleration, is the boil. People often quote, the first $100,000 is the hardest, but they rarely understand what that milestone represents. It's not just a number, it's the threshold where growth shifts from arithmetic to exponential, where your effort becomes leverage, where time becomes your coworker instead of your competitor. It's also the moment when your mindset upgrades almost automatically. You stop thinking like someone trying to build savings, you start thinking like someone managing capital, you stop worrying about every small market dip, you stop questioning every month whether it's worth it. You finally see what your earlier self could only hope for. You're no longer pushing a stalled engine. You're steering a machine that has started to move. This transformation is subtle but profound. It creates a sense of inevitability, a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. You begin to understand why wealthy people say time in the market beats timing the market, because time is the force that eventually tilts the playing field in your favor. The curve turning isn't luck, it isn't timing, it's the natural reward for consistency long after most people quit. And once the curve turns, it doesn't flatten again, not if you keep going, not if you maintain the discipline that carried you through the quiet years. From this moment forward, your money is no longer simply growing, it is compounding. And those two words belong to entirely different universes. Reaching your first $100,000 is not just a financial milestone, it's a psychological reboot, a point where your brain stops seeing wealth as something abstract and finally begins treating it as something real, attainable, and personal. For years, $100,000 feels like a mountain, the kind you climb step by step, breath by breath, with almost no sense of elevation. Every contribution feels tiny, every setback feels oversized, every month feels like a repeat of the last one. But something surprising happens the moment you cross that threshold. You don't just see a number, you see proof, proof that your habits work, proof that time is finally on your side, proof that you can build more wealth than you ever believed growing up. What makes $100,000 so transformative isn't the amount itself, it's what it symbolizes. It's the moment your financial identity changes. Before $100,000, you're someone who hopes investing works. After $100,000, you're someone who knows it does. That shift is enormous because once you trust the process, you stop making the mistakes that slow most people down. You stop panicking at every market dip. You stop chasing faster strategies. You stop doubting your plan every time the news screams uncertainty. Instead, you begin thinking like someone who understands momentum. You see the long arc, not the single moment. You start valuing time more than timing. You realize patience is not passive, it's a strategy. But there's another reason the first $100,000 feels almost magical. It's the first point where compound growth becomes visible enough to feel real. Up to this point, your contributions did most of the lifting, but after $100,000, you finally experience something entirely new, growth that happens without you. Your money begins to produce its own results. Your returns begin to show up in amounts you can feel. And for the first time, you understand what seasoned investors meant when they said, let your money work for you. There's also a deeper emotional shift. You stop feeling like you're trying to get ahead. You start feeling like you are ahead, at least compared to the version of yourself who started. Because hitting $100,000 quietly confirms something powerful. You are not stuck in life. You are not destined to repeat the financial patterns you grew up seeing. You are capable of building real wealth, even if you started with nothing. The first $100,000 isn't just a milestone, it's a mirror showing you who you've become. And once you see that version of yourself clearly, everything you do afterward begins operating from a place of confidence, not doubt. From here forward, the journey doesn't just look different, it feels different. The first $100,000 feels like a marathon, the second feels like a sprint. And this is one of the most surprising, almost unbelievable experiences for new investors. The moment you cross the first six-figure mark, the next one arrives in a fraction of the time. Not because you doubled your income, not because you changed your strategy, not because the market suddenly began favoring you. It happens for one reason only. Your money finally has enough mass to move without your permission. During your climb to the first 100K, your savings were doing nearly all the lifting. But after that, something dramatic shifts. Your investments begin generating returns that are no longer symbolic. They're substantial. If the first 100K was carrying a backpack full of rocks uphill, the second 100K is coasting downhill with a breeze at your back. People often underestimate just how powerful this shift is. In the early years, your monthly contributions outweigh your returns. But after the first milestone, those numbers quietly switch roles. Your returns begin outweighing your contributions. It's a psychological whiplash in the best possible way. Suddenly, a few months go by, and your portfolio grows by an amount that used to take a year. You log in one morning and realize your account increased more while you were sleeping than it used to increase in an entire quarter of disciplined effort. It's the first time wealth feels alive. Your money is no longer a pile you're slowly stacking. It's a system, active, growing, compounding, accelerating. This is where most people's relationship with investing changes forever. Because once you see how fast the second 100K comes, you finally understand a truth that no book or YouTube video can explain as clearly as experience. Wealth doesn't grow evenly, it grows in leaps. And the leap that happens after the first 100K is the one that convinces you that financial freedom isn't a fantasy, it's a timeline. This is also the point where something subtle but powerful shifts in your emotions. You stop feeling like you're behind. You stop worrying about every dip in the market. You stop obsessing over speed because now you've seen firsthand how the process accelerates on its own. The second 100K teaches you one of the most important financial lessons you'll ever learn. Your effort builds the first 100K, your money builds the second, and once you experience that, you'll never look at your financial future the same way again. There's a moment in every financial journey when the numbers stop feeling like numbers and start feeling like protection. A quiet psychological shift when your net worth becomes more than an account balance. It becomes a buffer between you and the chaos of life. That moment typically arrives around $250,000 to $300,000. It's not flashy. It's not a number anyone brags about online. It won't get you luxury cars or beachfront villas, but it gives you something far more valuable than any lifestyle upgrade: the first real sense of financial safety. Up until this point, your money feels fragile. A large car repair, a medical bill, a job change, any unexpected hit feels like it could set you back months, even years. But crossing this quarter million threshold changes your emotional relationship with money in a way that's difficult to explain until you feel it yourself. Suddenly, unexpected expenses don't feel like threats, they feel like inconveniences. Losing your job becomes stressful but not catastrophic. A bad market month becomes annoying but not terrifying. Because for the first time, you have something most people never experience: financial shock absorption. Your money can take a punch, and that changes everything. This level of wealth does something even more powerful: it shifts your focus from survival to strategy. You stop thinking in days or weeks. You start thinking in years. You begin planning instead of reacting. When your net worth hits this range, your mind finally stops running on fear. And once fear leaves the equation, discipline becomes dramatically easier. People often assume wealthy individuals are disciplined because they're wealthy. But in reality, the reverse is true. Once you feel safe, discipline stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like alignment. You're no longer white knuckling your budget. You're no longer constantly tempted to change your strategy. You no longer feel emotionally hijacked by every market dip. This threshold creates room for rationality, and it's at this point that many investors experience a strange realization. They could keep working, but they don't need to in the same way. Work becomes a choice, not a chain, a tool, not a lifeline. This quarter million milestone isn't glamorous, but it is transformational because it marks the transition from financial fragility to financial resilience, from "I hope I can handle what life throws at me" to "I know I can." And once you reach that level of confidence, the rest of your wealth building journey stops being powered by fear and starts being powered by vision. There's a point in your financial journey where everything suddenly feels different. Not because you hit some massive, flashy milestone, not because you changed your lifestyle, but because you notice something almost unbelievable. Your investments are now capable of earning the equivalent of a full time salary without you. That threshold arrives around $650,000. It's a strange number. It doesn't have the cultural weight of a million. It doesn't sound like retirement money, but mathematically and psychologically, this is one of the most transformative milestones in personal finance. Because at $650,000, you're no longer building wealth, you're replacing labor. Let's break that down. With a historically realistic 7 to 8% annual return, a portfolio of this size can generate somewhere around $45,000, $55,000 per year, completely passively. And for many households, that's the size of a comfortable income. The kind of income people wake up early for, commute for, sit through meetings for, deal with bosses for. Now imagine your money doing that instead. This changes the game in a way few people expect. At $650,000, you experience a new kind of freedom. Not the freedom to quit life, but the freedom to choose life. You can take a lower stress job, start a business, move to a cheaper city, take a sabbatical, switch careers, work part time, or simply breathe for the first time in your adult life. Because once your investments can cover a significant chunk of your basic lifestyle, your relationship with work changes forever. Work stops being your survival, it becomes your strategy, and that shift is priceless. This milestone also does something even more important. It removes the fear of starting over. If you lose your job, it's no longer a crisis, it's an inconvenience. If the economy slows, you're stable anyway. If you want to walk away from a toxic environment, you can. Your stress isn't tied to your paycheck anymore. People talk about financial freedom like it's a distant future event. But the truth is, The first real taste of freedom happens here. Not at $1 million, not at $5 million, but at $650,000 when your money first begins speaking in the language of income instead of interest. This is also where your discipline gets rewarded in a new way. Because now every percentage point matters. A simple 1% gain on your portfolio is the equivalent of a $1,000 paycheck. A market upswing can generate in a month what used to take you half a year to save. For the first time, you're not just compounding money, you're compounding time, choices, and autonomy. And that's when you finally understand a truth that wealthy people learn much earlier. Freedom doesn't start with millions. It starts the moment your money becomes a worker in your place. There's a point in your financial journey where something subtle but life changing happens. A moment when wealth stops feeling like something you stumbled into and starts feeling like something you control. That moment usually arrives somewhere between $800,000 and $900,000. Up until this point, even if you were disciplined, even if you invested consistently, there was always a quiet voice in the back of your mind whispering, what if it was just luck? What if you just got lucky with the market? What if this can disappear? But as your net worth approaches the million mark, something shifts. The scale becomes too big, the growth too consistent, the results too repeatable to be explained by luck. It starts to feel like a structure, not a streak. Your wealth now behaves like a well built machine, predictable, steady, responsive to time, and increasingly independent from your daily effort. Here's what makes this stage so transformative. Your money no longer grows because you push it, it grows because it has momentum. Think of it like a flywheel. At first, you fight to move it even an inch. Years later, it spins almost effortlessly, not because you're stronger, but because the wheel has stored every push you ever made. This is exactly what happens with your portfolio. At 800K, 900Ki, annual growth can easily jump into the $60,000, $80,000 range purely from the market. That's the equivalent of a solid salary, a salary you don't interview for, don't commute for, don't stress over. It just appears. And when that realization hits you, something else clicks. You start to trust your financial future, not blindly, but mathematically. That trust doesn't make you reckless, it makes you calm, measured, strategic. You stop chasing shortcuts because you finally understand how to win the long game. Even your relationship with uncertainty changes. Market drops no longer feel like threats, they feel like discounts. Volatility stops scaring you, it starts benefiting you. You stop feeling like a passenger and start feeling like the driver. But perhaps the biggest psychological shift is this: you begin thinking in decades, not months. Wealth stops being about how do I get more and becomes how do I protect and optimize what's already working. This is the stage where wealthy people begin to feel wealthy, not because they're extravagant, but because they have something most people never develop: a sense of financial inevitability, a quiet confidence that as long as they stay consistent, the math will take care of the rest. This isn't the finish line, it's the turning point before the finish line. The moment you realize that everything you've built is no longer fragile, your wealth becomes a force, a system, a momentum that compounds whether you're watching it or not. And once you feel that shift, truly feel it, your entire relationship with the future changes. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, almost invisible, where everything you've been building suddenly clicks into place. Not because you stumbled into luck, not because the universe finally decided to give you a break, but because every small disciplined choice you made up to this point has tagged into something unstoppable. Most people never reach this moment, not because they're incapable, but because they quit in the middle. They stop right before their snowball is finally heavy enough to roll on its own. They walk away when the process is finally about to get easier. But you didn't. By now, something fundamental has changed inside you. You no longer think in days or weeks, you think in decades. You no longer ask, how fast can I get rich? You ask, how far can I let compounding take me? You don't chase opportunities, you filter them. You don't fear downturns, you use them. This is the exact mindset shift that separates wealth maintainers from wealth creators. Because once compounding becomes the dominant force in your financial life, the game stops being about effort and starts being about endurance. You've built the habits, you've built the patience, you've built the resilience that most people never develop. And now, the ironic twist, the very moment your money finally works hardest is the moment you no longer need it to, because you've built something far bigger than a portfolio. You've built identity level discipline. You've built a financial engine that grows while you sleep. You've built freedom measured not in dollars, but in options. And from this point forward, the decisions you make aren't driven by fear, scarcity, or survival. They're driven by vision, the vision of who you want to become, the life you want to live, and the future you're no longer afraid to walk toward. Because you finally understand the truth. Wealth isn't the finish line, it's the foundation, the springboard, the platform that frees you to build a life based on intention instead of desperation. And standing here at the very edge of the financial life you've been creating piece by piece, you'll realize something profound. The journey was never about getting rich. It was about becoming the kind of person who could.